Learn English through story. The Fisherman's Lesson. In a small coastal village, there lived a fisherman named Matteo. He was known throughout the village for his extraordinary skill in fishing. Every day, Matteo would rise before dawn, set out to sea in his small wooden boat, and return with the most abundant catch of the day. The other villagers admired him for his success and sought his advice, but Matteo kept mostly to himself, focusing on his work in the solitude of the open sea. Despite his success, Matteo was not a wealthy man. He lived modestly, in a small cottage by the shore, with his wife Elena. Elena was a kind and patient woman, who never complained about their simple life. She was proud of her husband's abilities and grateful for the food he provided, but she often worried about him. Matteo spent more time at sea than with her, and though he was a good provider, she felt a growing distance between them. One evening, after a long day of fishing, Matteo returned home to find Elena sitting quietly by the fire. Her face was etched with concern. "Matteo," she began softly, "you work so hard, but you seem so distant. We rarely spend time together anymore. I miss the days when we would talk and laugh. Now, it feels like you're always somewhere else, even when you're here." Matteo looked at her, surprised by her words. He hadn't noticed the change, so consumed was he by his routine. "I'm sorry, Elena," he said, sitting down beside her. "I've been so focused on providing for us that I didn't realize I was neglecting you. But you know how important it is for me to catch as much as I can. The more fish I bring in, the more secure our future will be." Elena nodded, understanding his reasoning, but she couldn't help but feel that there was more to life than just work. "Matteo, do you remember when we first met? You used to say that the sea was a place of freedom, that you loved it because it made you feel alive. But now, it seems like it's just a job, something that weighs you down." Her words struck a chord with Matteo. He remembered those days, when fishing had been a joy, not just a means to an end. He realized that he had lost touch with that feeling, and with it, the connection he had once had with Elena. The next morning, as the sun was rising, Matteo set out to sea as usual, but this time, something felt different. The water was calm, the sky clear, and for the first time in a long while, Matteo allowed himself to simply be present in the moment. He felt the cool breeze on his face, heard the gentle lapping of the waves against the boat, and watched the seagulls soaring overhead. There was a peace in the stillness that he hadn't felt in years. As he drifted further from the shore, Matteo spotted an old man sitting on a rock by the water's edge. The man was fishing, but unlike Matteo, he had only a simple rod and line, with no nets or equipment. Curious, Matteo steered his boat closer and called out to the man, "Good morning, sir. I see you're fishing with just a rod. How do you manage to catch enough?" The old man looked up and smiled. "Good morning, young man. I catch only what I need for the day. No more, no less." Matteo was puzzled. "But what about tomorrow, or the days after that? Don't you worry about having enough?" The old man chuckled softly. "I've learned that worrying about tomorrow only takes away from the joy of today. If I catch what I need each day, I live in abundance. And if one day the fish are scarce, I know the sea will provide again. There's always enough, if you trust the rhythm of life." Matteo was struck by the old man's words. He had spent his life chasing after more and more fish, more security, more success, yet he had lost the simple pleasure of fishing, of living in the moment. He realized that in his quest for abundance, He had forgotten what truly mattered, the joy of the present, the connection with his wife, and the peace that came from trusting life's natural flow. The old man continued, his voice gentle but wise. The sea is generous, but it's also unpredictable. You can work yourself to the bone trying to control it, or you can learn to move with it, to appreciate its gifts without greed. In the end, it's not how much you catch that matters, but how much you cherish what you have. Matteo sat in his boat, reflecting on the old man's words. For years, he had been driven by the fear of not having enough, of losing what he had worked so hard to build. But in doing so, he had lost sight of the beauty around him, the love of his wife, and the simple joy of fishing. Thanking the old man for his wisdom, Matteo returned to shore, feeling lighter than he had in years. When he got home, he found Elena waiting for him. He took her hand and led her down to the water's edge, where they sat together, watching the waves. "Elena," Matteo began, his voice soft with emotion, "I've been so focused on providing for our future that I forgot to live in the present. I've missed you, and I'm sorry for the distance that's grown between us. But I've realized that there's more to life than just work. I want to spend more time with you, to enjoy what we have, and to trust that the sea will provide what we need." Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she leaned into him. "I've missed you too, Matteo. I'm so glad you're back." From that day on, Matteo changed his ways. He still went out to sea, but he no longer pushed himself to bring in the largest catch. Instead, he took only what he needed, and spent the rest of his time with Elena, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. He rediscovered the joy of fishing, not as a task, but as a communion with the sea, and he found that the less he worried, the more content he became. The villagers noticed the change in Matteo. He smiled more, laughed more, and was more generous with his time and his knowledge. When they asked him what had brought about the change, he simply said, "I learned that life is not about how much you have, but how much you appreciate what you have. The sea will always provide, but it's up to us to find joy in its gifts." And so, Matteo lived the rest of his days in peace, with Elena by his side, grateful for the lesson he had learned that true abundance comes not from what you possess, but from the richness of the life you live. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoyed, then please like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.